Hi, Matt O'Reilly here, lead pastor at Hope Hull United Methodist Church with today's digital devotion. We are working our way through Paul's letter to the Philippians in these digital devotions, and today we're in chapter 2, where Paul reveals what he expects with regard to life after death. Before we get into that, let's set the context just a little bit. Paul is writing to the Philippian Christians to encourage them in a variety of ways, to let them know that he's praying for them and that he is interested in the ministry, the ongoing ministry that they are engaged in. He's also got some things to say about the unity of their congregation that we'll come to in another digital devotion on another day. One of the main things to recognize is that Paul is writing from imprisonment. Now, scholars debate where he's writing from, and there are different arguments for different locations or origins of the letter. But the main point is he's writing from a place of imprisonment, and he is anticipating the possibility of his death. He says, from this place of imprisonment, that he will continue to rejoice, verse 18. He says that I know through your prayers and the help of the Spirit of Jesus Christ, this will turn out for my deliverance. So he's in prison. He expects to be released from prison, but he understands that the possibility of his death is a real possibility. So he says in verse 20, it's my eager expectation and hope that I will not be put to shame in any way, but that by my speaking with all boldness, Christ will be exalted now, as always, in my body, whether by life or by death. And that leads him to reflect on what he expects to happen if he were to die. So he goes on to say in verse 22, if I'm to live in the flesh, that means fruitful labor for me. I don't know which I prefer. So what is it? Dying, being with Jesus, or fruitful labor in the present? He says, I'm hard pressed between the two. My desire is to depart and be with Christ, for that is far better. But to remain in the flesh is more necessary for you. So the main thing to see about Paul's expectation is that he thinks when he dies, he believes, he has this conviction, that he will be present with Jesus in some way. Now, he doesn't go into a lot of detail about what that looks like. He doesn't say my soul is going to go to heaven. He doesn't say my spirit's going to do this. He just says, I want to depart and be with Christ, which is far better. And you can imagine that it is. Here is Paul suffering in chains for the gospel, anticipating the threat of death by the Roman Empire, by the governing authorities. If you read through Acts and other of Paul's letters, you'll see that he suffered a great deal in ministry, planting churches for the sake of the gospel. And so here he is, and with this life of hardship and suffering, the prospect of entering into peace in the presence of Jesus obviously has a great deal of appeal. Jesus died on Friday, on Good Friday, and was raised to new life on Sunday, Easter Sunday. And the body that he received, the body that was raised from the dead, is no longer able to die and no longer under any power from sin or anything else. It's no longer subject to mortality or frailty. It's perfect, whole, complete, immortal, and incorruptible. Right? So that movement from death to being dead, to being raised from the dead, that's the thing for Paul. And the body that went into the tomb for Jesus on Friday is the body that came out of the tomb on Sunday. That same body is reconstituted and fit for the new creation. So Paul sees that as the model for the believer's resurrection as well. He will transform the body of our humiliation that it may be conformed to the body of his glory. The body of his glory is the body he has now, the body that reigns at the right hand of God the Father Almighty. So for Paul, Christianity means belief in two steps of life, two stages of life after death. Stage one, when a believer dies, they go to be with Jesus, and that's really good, and it's an experience of peace. Life probably isn't the right word, because your body is dead in the ground, but you are consciously present with Jesus. Then after that, stage two, Christ returns and raises his people from the dead and gives them bodies that are no longer mortal or corruptible, just like his body. For Paul, he wants to live in such a way that he's always ready to die. He wants to live in such a way so that he's always ready to stand before Jesus. He doesn't want to live in such a way that would bring shame on the Lord Jesus. And the reason he is committed to living in a way to honor Jesus is because he expects to enter into the presence of Jesus, stage one, and then again to participate in the resurrection of Jesus and have a body like that, the one that Jesus has. So when we think about death, and as the coronavirus spreads around the world, many of us are constantly reminded of our own mortality. And we need to remember what our hope looks like as well. Not just what happens immediately upon death, but what actually will happen when Jesus returns to reign and rule in this world forever. Namely, the resurrection of the body. It means death doesn't have the final word. Jesus, the resurrected Lord, has the final word. Hey, thanks for watching this digital devotion. If it was meaningful to you, please click like and then share it with your friends and offer it as encouragement to someone else.